Theme 1 Bricks, Beds and Bones. The Harappan civilization 2600 BC से 1900 BC. Harappan seal made up of a steatite stone, commonly made up of a steatite stone. Archaeologists use the term culture for a group of objects distinctive in style that are usually found together within a specific geographical area and period of time. Early Harappan and late Harappan cultures in the same area. The Harappan civilization is sometimes called the matured Harappan culture to distinguish it from the early Harappan and the late Harappan cultures. Sutka Gendor in Pakistan, Balakot in Pakistan, Amri, Chanudaro in Pakistan. Mohenjo-daro lies west of Indus. Kot Diji lies east of Indus. Kanveri Wala in Cholistan, near Cholistan. Harappa lies south of Ravi. Mand in Jammu and Kashmir. Rakhi Gadi, Banwali and Mithal in Haryana. Kalibangan in Rajasthan. Dholavira in Gujarat. Nageshwar, Rangpur and Lothal all are in Gujarat. Next point. It appears that there was a break between the early Harappan culture civilization evident from large-scale burning at some sites as well as abandonment of certain settlements. Harappans eated fish. Finds of charred grains and seeds are also found. Studies studies by archaeobotanist grains. So grains of wheat, barley, lentil, chickpea and sesame. Millets found in Gujarat sites. Rice rarely found. Animal bones of cattle, sheep, goat, buffalo, pig are found and these are generally domesticated. This data is according to zoo archaeologists. Wild species wild species bones of example boar, deer, ghadial. Bones of fowl and fish are also found. Agricultural technologies. Representation on seals and terracotta sculpture indicate that the bull was known. Oxen was used for plugging. Terracotta models of plug found at Cholistan and in Banwali, that is in Haryana. Evidence of plugged field at Kalibangan associated with the early Harappan sites. Field having two sets of furrows at a right angle to each other, suggesting that two different crops were grown together. Most sites in semi-arid lands, where irrigation was probably required for agriculture. Traces of canals at Shotogai in Afghanistan are found, but not in the Punjab or Sindh. Maybe the possibility of siltation of canals in Punjab or Sindh. Likely that water from wells was used for irrigation. Water reservoirs in Dholavira may had been used to store water for agriculture. Saddle corns for grinding cereals. Now in Mohenjo-daro. Mohenjo-daro was a unplanned urban center. The settlement it is a settlement in two sections, higher but smaller called a citadel and the lower but larger called as the lower town. So the rough plan of Mohenjo-daro. Right side there is that is on the western side is the citadel which is a smaller part and to the eastern side is the lower town which is generally larger than the citadel. So citadel was raised on mud brick platform. Citadel was raised as compared to low town on mud brick platform. Citadel is walled, that is separated from lower town in Mohenjo-daro. Lower town was also walled. Several buildings were built on platforms which served as foundations. So it seems that the settlement was first planned and then implemented accordingly. Other signs of planning include bricks, which, whether sun dried or baked, were of standardized ratio, where the length and the breadth were 4 times and twice the height, respectively. That is, length is 4 times the height and the breadth is 2 times the height of the bricks. Such bricks were used at all Harappan settlements. At all Harappan settlements. Next point, Alexander Cunningham, the first Director General of ASI, often called the father of Indian archaeology. Drains. Roads and streets were laid out along an approximately grid pattern, intersecting at right angles. It seems that the streets with drains were laid out first, and then the houses were built along them. If domestic water, if domestic wastewater had to flow into the street drains, every house needed to have at least one wall along the street. Some variations in citadels. At Dholavira and Lothal, the entire settlement was fortified. Dholavira and Lothal both are in Gujarat. At Dholavira and Lothal, the entire settlement was fortified, and sections within the towns were also separated by walls. The citadel within the Lothal was not walled off but was built at a height. Next comes the domestic architecture. Many residential buildings were centered on a courtyard with rooms on all sides. Courtyard probably center of all activities like cooking and weaving, particularly during hot and dry weather. Privacy. No windows in the walls along the ground level. Besides, the main entrance does not give a direct view of the interior or the courtyard. Every house had its own bathroom paved with bricks, with drains connected through the walls to the street drains. Some houses have remains of staircases to reach second story or roof. Many had wells, often in a room that could be reached from the outside and perhaps used by passers-by. According to Ernest Mackay, the main channels were made of bricks set in mortar and were covered with loose bricks that could be removed from cleaning. In sometimes, in some cases, limestone was used for the covers. House drains were first emptied into a sump or a cesspit into which solid matter settled, while waste water flowed out into the street drains. Drainage systems were not unique to the large cities, found in the smaller ones as well. At Luthal, while houses were built of the mud bricks, drains were made up of the burnt bricks. The citadel, warehouse in the citadel. The lower brick portions remains in the lower brick portions of the warehouse remain, while the upper portions, probably the wood, decayed with time. Great bath in the citadel. Great bath is a large rectangular tank in the courtyard, surrounded by a corridor on all four sides. Two flights of steps on north and south leading into the tank. Wa- Great bath was made watertight by setting bricks on edge and using a mortar of gypsum. Rooms on three sides, in one of which was a large well. So the next point is tracking social differences. First, burials. So how can we track this that there may or may not be social differences present during the times of the Harappan civilization? So the first indirect evidence we get from the burials, and the second indirect evidence we get from looking for the luxuries. So first comes the burials. Dead were generally laid in pits. Sometimes the hollowed out spaces were lined with bricks. Some graves contain pottery and ornaments, belief in afterlife, jewelry in burials of both sexes. In Harappa in mid 1980s, three shell rings, a jasper bed, and hundreds of micro beds were found near a skull of a male, sometimes buried with copper mirrors. But on whole, appear that the Harappans did not believe in burying precious things with the dead. So the second point, looking for luxuries, utilitarian artifacts. So objects of daily use made fairly easily out of ordinary materials such as stone or clay are generally utilitarian artifacts. Example: coins, pottery, needles, flesh rubbers, that is body scrubbers, etc. Generally distributed throughout the settlements. Utilitarian artifacts generally distributed throughout the settlements. Luxuries artifacts. If they are rare or made from costly non-local materials or with complicated technology, then these are luxurious artifacts. Example: little pots of faience were considered precious because they were difficult to make. So the little pots of faience were made of ground sand or silica mixed with color and a gum of uh, uh, silica mixed with color and a gum, and then fired. Next point. Spindle whorls made of rare materials such as faience were also found. Rare objectives made of valuable materials are generally concentrated in large settlements like Mohenjo-daro and Harappa. Example: miniature pots of faience, perhaps used as perfume bottles, are mostly found in Mohenjo-daro and Harappa, and there are none from small settlements like Kalibangan. Next point: gold, which is rare. All gold jewelry found at Harappan sites was recovered from hoards. All gold jewelry found at Harappan sites was recovered from hoards. So, next point: finding out about the craft production. In Chanodaro, which is in Pakistan, present-day Pakistan, it is a 7-hectare settlement almost exclusively devoted to craft production, including bed making, shell cutting, metal working, seal making, and weight making. Variety of materials for bed making: stones. Example: car carnelian, that is which is of red color, jasper, crystal, quartz, and steatite. Metals like copper, bronze, and gold are used. Shell, faience, and terracotta or burnt clay were also used for bed making. So the next point is how the steatite micro beds was made remains a puzzle for archaeologists studying ancient technology. Experiments have revealed that the red color of carnelian was obtained by firing the yellowish raw material and beds at various stages of the production. Nodules were chipped into rough shapes and then finally flaked into the final form. Grinding, polishing, and drilling completed the process. Specialized drills have been found at the Chanodaro, Lothal, and Dholavira. Nageshwar and Balakot. Next point: Nageshwar and Balakot. Near the coast: Nageshwar in Gujarat, present-day Gujarat, and Balakot in Pakistan. Near the coast were specialized centers for making shell objects, including bangles, ladles, and inlay, which were taken to other settlements. Likely that finished products like beds from the Chanodaro and Lothal were taken to the large urban centers such as the Mohenjo-daro and Harappa. So the next point: identifying centers of production. What we look for? We look for raw materials like stone nodules, whole shells, copper ore, tools, unfinished objects, and rejects and waste material. Traces suggest that apart from small specialized centers, craft production was also undertaken in large cities such as Mohenjo-daro and Harappa. So the next point, sixth point: strategies for procuring material. So terracotta toy models of bullock carts suggest that bullock carts were used for transporting goods and people across land routes. Riverine routes along Indus and its tributaries, coastal routes were probably used. Materials from the subcontinent and beyond. Sites like Nageshwar and Balakot in areas where shell was available. Sites like Shotugai in Afghanistan, near best known source of lapis lazuli, a blue stone. Lothal near sources of carnelian from Bharuch in Gujarat, steatite from South Rajasthan and North Gujarat, metal from Rajasthan. Expeditions to Khetri region of Rajasthan for copper and South India for gold. Occasional finds of Harappan artifacts such as steatite microbeds in these areas are indicators of such contact. There is evidence in the Khetri area for what archaeologists call the Ganeshwar Jodhpura culture. Ganeshwar Jodhpura culture, with its distinctive non-Harappan pottery and an unusual wealth of copper objects. Ganeshwar Jodhpura culture. There is evidence in the Khetri area for what archaeologists call the Ganeshwar Jodhpura culture, with its distinctive non-Harappan pottery, and an unusual wealth of copper objects. B point: contact with distant lands. Copper from Oman. Chemical analysis showed that both Omani copper and Harappan artifacts have traces of nickel, suggesting a common origin. A large Harappan jar coated with a thick layer of the black clay has been found at the Omani sites. Such thick coatings prevent the percolation of the liquids. Mesopotamian texts Mesopotamian texts datable to the 3rd BCE refer to the copper coming from the Megan, Oman, that is Oman. And interestingly enough, copper found at the Mesopotamian sites also contains traces of the nickel. So here is the image showing Dilmun. So the next point is long distance contact between the Harappan seals weights, dice, and beds. Long distance contacts include Harappan seals, weights, dice, and beds. Mesopotamian texts mention contact with Dilmun, that is island of Bahrain, Magan, that is Oman, Meluha, that is Harappan civilization, and the Turan area in the image, uh, present part of Iran, Afghanistan, and Pakistan, some parts of Pakistan, Balochistan, Sindh, and the Mesopotamia in the above. So the next point, cylindrical seal of Mesopotamia. The humped bull motif on it appears to be derived from the Indus region. Next point, round Persian Gulf seal found in the Bahrain, sometimes Bahrain, that is Dilmun. So the round Persian Gulf seal found in Bahrain, that is Dilmun, sometimes carries Harappan motifs. Local Dilmun, that is Bahrain, weights followed Harappan standards. A seal depicting a boat was also found at the sites. Mesopotamian texts mention the products from Meluha, carnelian, lapis lazuli, copper, gold, and varieties of wood. A Mesopotamian myth says of Meluha, as I quote, "May your bird be the Haja bird. May its call be heard in the royal palace." Archaeologists think the Haja bird was the peacock. Mesopotamian texts refer to the Meluha as a land of seafarers. Finds of depictions of ships and boats on the sails led to this conclusion as well. So the 7 point, seals, script, and weights. Seals and sealings were to facilitate long distance communication. Script. Script generally use motifs, generally an animal, conveyed a meaning to those who could not read. Most inscriptions are short, longest is of 26 signs. Non-alphabetical, undeciphered script. The script is non-alphabetical and is undeciphered and generally written from right to left. Signs between 375 to 400. Writing found on seals, copper tools, rims of jars, copper and terracotta tablets, jewelry, bone hoards, and signboards. Weights. Weights were usually made up of a stone called chert and generally cubical with no markings. Lower denominations are binary, that is 1, 2, 4, 8, 16, 32, etc. up to 12,800. While the higher denominations followed the decimal system. Next point. Ancient authority. Uniformity in pottery, seals, weights, and bricks. Uniformity in pottery, seals, weights, and bricks. Palaces and kings. A large building at Mohenjo-daro labeled as a palace, but not spectacular, associated with it. But not any spectacular find associated with it. A stone statue known as priest king, because archaeologists were familiar with Mesopotamian history and its priest king and have found parallels in the Indus region. Now the next point, the end of the civilization, the end of the Indus Valley civilization, or the end of the Harappan civilization. So the evidence that by 1800 BCE, most of the mature Harappan sites in the region, such as the Cholistan, had been abundant. Cholistan in present day is the desert area of the Pakistan. Simultaneously, expansion of population into new settlements in Gujarat, Haryana, and Western UP came up. Few sites after 1900 BCE, there appears to have been a transformation of material culture, marked by disappearance of the distinctive artifacts of the civilization, weights, seals, and special beds. Writing, long distance trade, and craft specialization also disappeared. House construction techniques deteriorated, and large public structures were no longer produced. Overall, artifacts and settlements indicate a rural way of life in what are called the late Harappan on successor cultures. Several explorations for several explanations for decline. Uh, these are related to climate change or deforestation or excessive floods, shifting and or drying up of the rivers to overuse of the landscape. So next is the viewpoint of the R.M. Wheeler. So Wheeler said, Rigveda mentions Pur, meaning rampart, fort or stronghold. So Pur means rampart, fort or strongholds. Indra, the Aryan war god, is called Puramadra, that is the fort destroyer. So the next point, discovering the Harappan civilization. So Dayaram Sahani discovered seals at Harappa. Rakhal Das Banerjee found similar seals at Mohenjo-daro. So D.R. Sahani was associated with seals of Harappa, and R.D. Banerjee was associated with the seals of Mohenjo-daro. In 1924, John Marshall, DG of ASI, announced the discovery of a new civilization. S.N. Roy, in The Story of the Indian Archaeology, said Marshall left India 3,000 years older than he had found her. John Marshall was the first professional archaeologist to work in India and brought his experience of working in the Greece and Crete to the field. Marshall tended to excavate along regular horizontal lines measured uniformly throughout the mound, ignoring the stratigraphy of the site. When people continue to live in the same place, their constant use and their use of the landscape results in the buildup of occupational debris called a mound, abandonment or distortions. Abandonment or desertions, what are called sterile layers, can be identified by the absence of such traces. Generally, the lowest layers are the oldest, and the highest are the most recent. The study of these layers is called the stratigraphy. So, generally, the lowest layers are the oldest, and the highest are the most recent. The study of these layers is called the stratigraphy. Artifacts found in the layers can be assigned to specific cultural periods and can thus provide the cultural sequence for a site. Artifacts found in layers can be assigned to specific cultural periods and can thus provide the cultural sequence for a site. So the next point, new techniques and questions. So R.E.M. Wheeler in 1944 was the DG of Archaeological Survey of India, ASI. Wheeler recognized that it was necessary to follow the stratigraphy of the mound rather than dig mechanically along the uniform horizontal lines. Also, as an ex-army brigadier, Wheeler brought with him a military precision to the practice of archaeology. Next point, problems of piecing together the past. Organic materials such as the cloth, leather, wood, and reeds generally decompose, especially in the tropical regions. A. Classifying finds in terms of material like stone, clay, metal, bone, ivory, etc. Second is in terms of function. Archaeologists have to decide whether, for instance, an artifact is a tool or an ornament, or both, or something meant for a ritual use. Sometimes archaeologists have to take recourse to indirect evidence. For example, though there are traces of cotton at some Harappan sites, to find out about clothing, we have to depend on indirect evidence, including depictions in sculpture. B. Problems of interpretation. Arch- Early archaeologists thought that certain objects which seemed unusual or unfamiliar may have had a religious significance. Terracotta figures of women, heavily jeweled, some with elaborate headdresses, regarded as mother goddesses. A rare stone statue of men in an almost standardized posture, seated with one hand on the knee, such as the priest king. Ritual significance include great bath and fire altars found at the Kalibangan and Lothal. So the uh, fire altars are found at Kalibangan and Lothal. Kalibangan. Kalibangan is found in Rajasthan and Lothal is found in Gujarat. So altars are found in Kalibangan and Lothal. Reconstruction of religious beliefs and practices by examining seals, some of which seem to depict ritual scenes. Others with plant motifs are thought to indicate nature worship. Some animals, such as the one horned animal, often called the unicorn, depicted on seals seem to be mythical. In some seals, a figure seated in a cross-legged in a yogic posture, sometimes surrounded by animals, had been regarded as a depiction of Proto-Shiva. Also, conical stone objects have been classified as lingas. The earliest religious text, the Rig Veda, compiled between 1500 to 1000 BC. The earliest religious text, the Rig Veda, mention a god named Rudra, which is a name used for Shiva in later Puranic traditions, that is in 1st millennium CE. However, unlike Shiva, Rudra is in Rig Veda is neither depicted as Pashupati nor as a yogi. Pashupati means lord of animals in general and cattle in particular. So, in the earliest religious texts, that is in Rig Veda, mentions a god named Rudra, which is a name used for Shiva in the later Puranic traditions, that is in 1st millennium CE. However, unlike Shiva, Rudra in the Rig Veda is neither depicted as Rudra in Rig Veda is neither depicted as Pashupati nor as yogi, but the Shiva, as we know, is the lord of animals, is depicted as Pashupati. In other words, this depiction does not match the depictions of Rudra in the Rig Veda. So, the viewpoint of Ernest Mackay. Ernest Mackay in early Indus civilization 1948, what he wrote. He wrote in early Indus civilization 1948 that various small cones made of lapis lazuli, jasper, chalcedony, and other stones, most beautifully cut and finished, and less than 2 inches in height, are also thought to be lingas. On the other hand, it is just as possible that they were used in the board games. So here is a timeline. Major periods in early Indian archaeology. So 2 million years before present, lower Paleolithic age. Then up to 80,000 middle Paleolithic age. Then 35,000 years ago, upper Paleolithic age. Then 12,000 years ago, Mesolithic. Then 10,000 years ago, Neolithic. In Neolithic, early agriculturalists and pastoralists developed 6000 BC. So Neolithic is associated with early agriculturist and pastoralist. In 6000 BC, before BP, before present, Chalcolithic age began. That is first use of copper. Chalcolithic means use copper. 2600 BCE, Harappan civilization. Advent of the Harappan civilization. 1000 BCE, early iron megalithic burial. 600 BCE to 400 CE, Common Era, early historic period. Note indicating approximate dates. So the next point is major developments in Harappan archaeology. 19th century, that is in 1875, report of Alexander Kalingam on Harappan seal. Now comes the 20th century. 1921, MS Watts begins excavation at Harappa. 1925, excavations begin at Mohenjo-daro. 1946, REM Wheeler excavates at Harappa. 1955, SR Rao begins excavation at Lothal. 60, BB Lal and BK Thapar begin excavations at Kalibangan. Kalibangan is in Rajasthan and Lothal is in Gujarat. 1974, MR Mughal begins exploration in Bahawalpur. Now you have to find uh, where the hell where it is situated. It is a team of German and Italian archaeologists begin surface explorations at Mohenjo-daro. 86, American team begins excavations at Harappa. 1990, RS Beast begins excavations at the Dhola Vira.